Neighbor problems. I grew up in a house, and the property next to us would sometimes get upset because we didn't mow our lawn enough, and it would protrude onto their property. And they were very particular on how they liked it. We were never a bad household. We never caused problems. But for our neighbor, he wanted his lawn a certain way. And he was not happy that sometimes our lawn would be overgrown. Neighbor problems. Sometimes when I was in my teenage years and I grew up with two siblings, we'd have parties at the house. And neighbors didn't like that. They get concerned. Oh, you're going to bring down our property level if things get out of hand at a party. I've heard people tell me that. Neighbor problems. I lived in my own house. I owned my own condominium for 15 years. Now I was blessed to have great neighbors. I thank God for them. But also there were times where if you live in a condo or an apartment that is adjoining to others, meaning you have somebody living below you or somebody living beneath you, if there is some type of issue, whether it's a leak, whether it's a adjoining piece of the property, whether it's just footsteps hearing above you, you know what I mean? If you live below and someone's above you and they walk a lot at night and you hear their footsteps, or if they run the washing machine during the night, or if there's a leak and it drips down to their place, or if you share a common garage or whatever. I mean, there could be an issue there that can hurt your quality of life. Not because necessarily you have a bad neighbor. You can have two great people that truly love each other. But when there's a problem, there's a problem. And it's like you almost feel bad even if there's two good neighbors because, you know you're intruding on their space and they know they're intruding on your space. And you got to deal with your job and everything else, including you got to deal with your neighbor. Dealing with your spouse, you're dealing with your boss, and now you got to deal with your neighbor because there's some type of common issue that needs to be resolved, and the only way it's resolved, you work together. Luckily, in many areas, I was blessed to work with people that were reasonable. But for many, you may have a neighbor that's unreasonable. And to resolve that neighbor conflict, that neighbor problem, you either have to go to court, or you have to wait till your lease is up, which could be a year, or you have to sell your property, which can take months. And that's a huge downside of being in a fixed location. The huge upside of living in a car and being mobile is you have the flexibility. Start your car and go. Doesn't mean you can avoid all problems because you can be parked in a campground, Walmart, rest area, etc. and somebody next to you be playing music or doing whatever, being rowdy. So you may still have that problem, but your ability to resolve the problem quickly by simply starting your car and going is a blessing. And has added less stress to your life. Because if you lived in a fixed house or a fixed apartment and your neighbor above you was causing problems, or the neighbor below you was being a jerk, or the neighbor on the side of you wasn't cutting his grass, to resolve that is going to take months and months, and it may never resolve. Or if you have a great neighbor that you guys get along with, like, oh, it's magic, and all of a sudden they decide to sell and move to another state, now you're worried that the neighbor next to you is going to give you problems. And now that's causing extra stress on your mind. So definitely in a fixed location, a fixed house, fixed apartment, fixed condo, that's a huge problem. Well, what about travel trailers and motorhomes? Somewhat that's resolved, but there's whole YouTube channels for travel trailer, people that live in travel trailers and RV parks, that all they base every video on is complaining about their neighbor and having pet, hurtful nicknames about their neighbor. Oh, here's the, jerk off from New York. Or here's the, hillbilly from, Texas. They associate the state that the person's from in that RV park with a negative tone, with a negative annotation. And that's disrespectful. And they base whole videos on that. So just because you have a RV trailer, just because you have a travel trailer, some type of RV, does not eliminate that, because plenty of people get stuck in that RV park and they curse their neighbor. Living because they're locked either into a monthly lease at that RV park or whatever. So again, flexibility is your greatest asset living in a car. You can change the surrounding neighbors at any time. Doesn't mean life is perfect, because some benefits of a community means you have more resources to do different things, and you have the safety of a fixed location. So I'm not trying to be one-sided, but I am pointing out in my personal life experience, based on actual things that I've just shared with you, some of the value that I see being mobile and living full-time in a car and avoiding some of the neighbor headaches. Not to say that there's not some beautiful parts about having a great neighbor, but it's another relationship. And every relationship, even good relationships, require work to sustain and maintain. So if you are one of the people who is living a nomadic life, living full-time out of a car or van or something like that, you may like a lot of solitude, a lot of lone time like me. I still embrace the aspect of community. I still embrace adding something to society and being engaged in a healthy manner in society. But to recharge your batteries properly, if you're like me, you need a certain amount of time just for you and not to be caught up in, problems with your neighbor. So that's one benefit that has come to my mind and experiences I want to share with you. Your flexibility, living in a car, to start your car and go and to change your surroundings without having to get stuck in the mud of having to sell your house or worrying about the neighbor who is selling their house and who may move in. Think about that before you necessarily buy an RV lot, before you get fixed. Just think about that. Because I've been down that road. HOA, homeowners associating, some of those meetings, dealing with some of the people, can be very contentious. Doesn't mean, again, living in a car is for everybody, but I'm sharing my perspective, I'm sharing my thoughts, and I'm pushing forward. I'm keeping myself inspired. And that's all that matters, regardless of dislikes, regardless of negativity. We push forward, we stay positive, and like-minded people connect and push forward, and everyone else, we wish the best for them too. We want to stay positive, all right? Stay inspired.